In this video, I'll be showing you how to complete a Google Ads audit of any Google Ads account. To get started, you'll need to have a copy of our Google Ads audit spreadsheet, and you'll need to be inside your Google Ads campaign. We're going to move those right next to each other so we can swipe between them really easily. Something to know right off the bat is how our spreadsheet is broken apart. We have different sections based on the different sections inside Google Ads. In order for you to go through it more efficiently, you'll basically want to go through each section one at a time in order to fill this out. If you answer yes to one of the questions, that means it's set up properly and you don't need to worry about it. If you answer no or you're unsure of your answer to the question, this means that it is a problem that needs to get fixed. And if you need help with any of these problems, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to hop on a call and walk you through what could be improved in your account. Obviously, this is a brief overview of problems that could be wrong with your account, but it is by no means all-encompassing. So if you do have any answers marked no or unsure, you should definitely schedule a call with us to walk through what could possibly be going wrong with your account and what steps you could take to improve your Google Ads performance, because there's a very real chance that you are wasting money if you are marking any of these categories no or unsure. While we're going through and completing the spreadsheet, it'll be very helpful to mark down locations of the problems that you find. That way it can easily be found when being reviewed, and it can be easily fixed. And any details you have about any problems with any of the questions will also be super useful when filling out this spreadsheet. So in this video, we'll be performing an example audit on one of the customers that we work for, Polaris Dentistry. We've made some changes in this account. That way there are problems for us to catch. That way you can kind of see what it looks like to catch a problem in an account and go in and fill out the information in this spreadsheet. So to get started, we're going to go over to our Google Ads account and we're going to go into campaigns on the left-hand side. From here, we're going to click on the settings. And once this loads in, we will be able to go through and knock out this first section. So in conversion goals, under the account default, are there conversions for every conversion action on their website? So right here, we're going to click on this drop-down menu underneath account default. And you can see here that there are 5 conversion actions, and this is typically the maximum amount of conversion actions that you need to worry about for any given account. For those who don't have storefronts, you do not want to have a get directions as an account default goal, and that's something that we'll go in and go over later on. But these 4 up here are definitely good for most accounts, unless you're an e-commerce business, and in that case, you need to have a purchases conversion goal in this section. But for this account, these are all the conversion actions that show on their website, so we are good on this end. So we'll go back here, and we will click, we'll just put in an X to mark it for yes. Is there a marketing objective selected, and does it line up with the company's digital marketing goals? From here, we're going to click on this drop-down menu, and you can see that there are 3 different marketing objectives. For most businesses, leads is going to be the best selection. If you are an e-commerce business, sales is definitely the goal that you want to have selected. And for anybody else that's just looking to get traffic to their website, obviously you want to have website traffic selected. But in this case, we are looking to just get conversions, and in this case, conversions are leads. So this means this one is good. So we'll go back here and check it off. In locations, under location options, is the location option selected as, nope, we want to select right here. Underneath location options right here, is it selected as presence? We do not typically want to do presence or interest. This means that people all across the world can search up your location and click on your ad. Most of the time, if you're targeting a specific location, you only want to target people that are actually in that location. So we want to have this one selected. And that means that one's good, so we can check that off. Move this down so we can read it a little better. In bidding, is maximize conversions selected? If not, is there a good reason for it? So we're going to go down to the bidding, and maximize conversions is selected, so we're good on that end. If you have maximize conversions with a target cost per action, that's not necessarily wrong either. Typically, the things that we're looking for is if somebody is optimizing for clicks when they really should be optimizing for conversions, or if they're optimizing for impression share when they should be optimizing for conversions. Most of the time, conversions is the best possible bidding strategy, so we typically see this as a problem if it's one of these other strategies. And if they select a bid strategy directly, such as manual CPC. This is a very advanced strategy that you should only do if you have in-depth knowledge of how to actually go in and optimize a campaign. So not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to be an advanced Google Ads user in order for this to be effective. But we have maximized conversions, and that means we are good to check that off as yes. In broad match keywords, is it off? So we want to always have this one selected as off because we want to manage the keywords that are either shown as broad match or phrase match or exact match. We don't want Google deciding that for us because a lot of the times Google likes to waste our money. So we're going to leave that as off, and so we are good to check that as yes. Are they only running Google search campaigns with no search partners or display network? So most of the time, right here, we only want to be showing up in the Google search network. We don't want to be showing for the search partners or the display network because we have less control over who we show to in these locations. So you can't be as specific. Your ads are going to show up a lot more, and typically the click-through rate is a lot lower. And sometimes this can cause bad performance or wasted ad spend. Not necessarily a bad thing to have these selected, but when we first start up a campaign and we're first going through and optimizing a campaign, we want to have these off so that way we can focus on other portions of the campaign to optimize. So we obviously have search network clicked on, so we want to mark this as no, and we can say that the campaign that we found this under is local search. That's the campaign name, so we want to mention that we found this in the campaign local search. For those with multiple search campaigns, this is really important because it allows someone to go in and find the campaign where the problem was a lot quicker. Obviously, in this situation, we only have one search campaign and we have a smart campaign as well. For smart campaigns, there is no setting option like there is for search campaigns, so we do not perform this audit check on smart campaigns. We only perform it on search campaigns. In the case for this local search campaign, search partners actually did end up being super effective, but you can see down here that the display network was not effective. So it's always something that when we're going through an audit, we want to check to make sure those are turned off to get started. And then once we get data from the regular Google search campaign, we can then use that data to help boost our performance with the search partner and the Google display network. Next up, we're going to go to location, and we're going to review the location settings. So as you can see, you do this by campaign. So if you have multiple campaigns, you'll need to do this audit for each one of them. If any one of them is marked, any one of them has the answer no, you need to mark no for that entire section, and then put in the details of like what campaign you marked no for. That way we know what to go in and look for in order to get it fixed, because if there's any problems with it, we don't want to mark it yes, because we want to know, okay, this is something that was not done properly and needs to go in and be checked. So for service area businesses, are there negative locations surrounding their targeted areas? So in this case, we are going to search by campaign. We're going to go to the local search campaign. And in here, you can see that they do not have negative locations around their search area. And so what we'd want to do is put in negative locations in a broad area around here, because obviously we don't want people from out here looking up and clicking on our ad for dentists that are hundreds of miles away from them. And typically, this is not a huge problem when you have the location selected, the location settings set correctly, but it is something that we want to do to prevent any stray clicks and any possible chance of wasting money on inadvertent clicks on our ads. So we would go back here. We need to mark this as no, and then we need to put that it was under local search. Obviously, as I said before, if you have multiple campaigns, you need to do this check for every single one of those campaigns. And then as we go down here, you'll see that we have ad groups and we have ads, and you'll need to do this, these checks for ad groups and every single ad group, and you'll need to do the checks for ads for every single ad. And once we get down there, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Now that we're in here, we're going to check for bid adjustments. As you can see, there are no bid adjustments that have been placed. The reason we don't want bid adjustments in here is because they actually don't do anything if you're using an automated strategy. The only time they do actually work is if you are using a manual cost per click bidding strategy or a maximize click bidding strategy. But most of the time we're using a maximize conversion strategy, and so bidding adjustments actually don't do anything in here. If we wanted to make a bid adjustments by location, we would need to create a separate campaign for each of the locations to target specific amounts of money to each of those locations. So we'll mark this as yes, we're good to go. When using the location report in the report section, are there any clicks or impressions only in states they service? So this is something that is very easy for us to go in and do because we have reports that we have saved that we can automatically go in and check out. But if you do not have one of these reports already set up, you will need to create your own report. So in saved reports, we're going to our location report. And you can see over here what I've used in row and used in column. You can go in and create your own type of table in order to check the same stats that we are checking. So as we can see here, all of our clicks have come from Texas. Nothing has come from anywhere else in the past year. So that means our filters have been done correctly, and we don't need to worry about inadvertent clicks outside of the state of Texas. If we filter down to look zip code by zip code, we may have some inadvertent clicks that are inside Texas that may just be several miles outside of our target range, and that's where the negative location encircling our targeted locations comes into play. But we'll mark that as good. Is the targeted service area broken up by specific areas and not just one big radius? So this one we can go back and check in the location setting. And if you remember what we were talking about before when we were looking at the specific targeted areas, you can see that it's not just a circle. We have targeted specific zip codes. This allows us to go in and create campaigns by these locations based on their performance. So if we had a really high cost per conversion in one of these locations, we would know, okay, maybe we want to exclude it, not exclude it, we may want to remove it, or if we have really good performance, we may want to create a specific campaign for that specific location. If we just do one big radius, we don't have that option. So as you can see, we've broken it out correctly. I'm going to go back here. We can mark this as yes. The next section we have to review is conversions, which we will find in the goals section under summary. From here, we're going to check to see if there's conversion actions in goals. So this is just checking to see if we are actually tracking conversions. So as you can see here, we do have conversion actions. So we're good to mark that as yes. Next up are all the conversions either active or no recent conversions. So this just is making sure that we have all of our conversion actions working. So as you can see here, we have one that says needs attention. This means, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's not working. It just means that it may not have received a conversion in a significant period of time, but it's definitely something that we need to go in and try to troubleshoot. So we're going to mark that as no. And then we're going to write down the conversion action that we are having problems with. So it's click for directions. So that way it's easy to find when we go back in and we know what we're looking for. if we see that there's a no and we go back and we say, oh, there was actually no problem with it, and when we go back in, nothing is marked as needs attention or not working. We just know that it at some point wasn't working, and that's why this was marked no. So we're not wasting time trying to figure out why this was marked no. For businesses with no storefront is the get directions and engagement conversions marked as secondary, or 0 out of X campaigns. So 0 out of X campaigns, you can see right here, this is 0 out of X. X is 3 in this case. And in this case, we do have a storefront, so we're actually going to skip this section. This just means leave it blank because this store does have a storefront. So it needs to be marked as primary. So the click for directions needs to be marked as primary, and it needs to be an account default goal, X out of X campaigns. And as we can see here, businesses with a storefront is a get directions and engagement conversions marked as primary, and account default goal for X out of X campaigns. We're good there. So we're going to skip this section. Mark this as X because we're good on this. If you do not have a storefront, you obviously want these to be marked as secondary because you don't want people getting a location to an address that you don't perform services at. So say if you're a lawn care business, you don't want people coming to your house if that's what your business address is. That's a wasted conversion. So we'd obviously want that to be marked as secondary. Or if it's marked as primary, it can be, in this case, see how this is marked as primary, but it's 0 out of 3 campaigns. That means it's not being tracked across any campaign, so it's not being tracked as a conversion. So if you are a service-based business with no storefront, that's what you would want it to be looking like. Are the submit lead form, contact purchase, and phone call lead conversions marked as primary, and the default goal for X out of X campaigns. So we'll just be going up here. We can see account default goal, 2 out of 3 campaigns. So this means that we need to make sure that the campaigns that are currently running line up with the campaigns that are shown here. So as you can see, we have it says local search, and the campaigns that we are only running one search campaign at the moment, which is local search. So we are good on that end, but it is not X out of X campaigns. This is 2 out of 3 campaigns. So we're still going to mark this as no because it's still something that could possibly be a problem. As you can see here, this one says 3 out of 3 campaigns. This is what we would want all of these to say. So since it's not 3 out of 3, we're actually going to mark this as no. And we're going to go and write down each of the ones that it has a problem with. So we got book appointment. Doesn't have all of them. Phone call lead. And submit lead form. All 3 of these do not line up with what we are looking for. So it's just something that's worth checking out to make sure that everything is in good order. For businesses who don't want phone calls, are those conversions marked as secondary? So if, say, you don't have somebody that answers the phone constantly, so you don't want people calling in, you'd rather them just submit a lead form, you need to make sure that either we're on phone call leads. We want to make sure that this phone call lead says 0 out of 3 conversions, and this one says, or this says secondary. Additionally, we want to make sure this says secondary. You don't want this to say 0 out of 3 campaigns because you still want people emailing you. So in this case, the only option would be to have this as secondary. So if this is not secondary, you need to mark this as no. But in this case, this account does want us to have calls, so we're just going to leave this blank. For businesses who only want purchases, are all other conversions marked as secondary? So this is for e-commerce businesses and people who sell things online, and people who they can make purchases on their website. In this case, we don't sell things on this specific website, but if we did, and we did have a purchase conversion action, which would be the main driving force for our campaign, we want to see an ROI. We would want all of these to be marked as secondary. We don't want any of these to be tracked as conversions. We would only want to track purchases as the primary conversion. But in this case, this account does not do that, so we will leave that blank as well. Our page view conversions marked as secondary or 0 out of X campaigns. So this is the one we were showing us down here. It's not marked as secondary, but it is marked as 0 out of 3 campaigns. So this one is good. We can mark this as yes. Have they recorded at least 10 conversions in the past month? So we are going to go up here. We're going to go 30 days up to yesterday. And as you can see here, if you add these up, it adds up to more than 10. That means this campaign is running with enough conversions for Google to actually optimize at a decent rate. If you're getting less than 10 conversions, this typically means that optimize or the maximize conversions bidding strategy doesn't have enough data to maximize your ad spend. So it's definitely a problem that needs to be looked into. But in this case, we have enough conversions, so we can mark this as yes. Has each campaign recorded at least one conversion in the past month? So in order to check that, we'll go back out and look at our campaigns. From here, we want to view all of our campaigns. And as we can see here, each one of them has recorded at least one conversion in the past 30 days or past month. So we know that they are actually tracking conversions and are still viable campaigns. So we can go back here and mark this as yes. If one of your campaigns has not recorded a conversion in the past 30 days, that is definitely something that needs to be checked out. You need to mark that as no. Are enhanced conversions turned on? So in order to do that, we're actually going to go into clicked on the wrong thing, into goals, into settings. And from here, we're going to check to see that enhanced conversions are turned on. As you can see, they have not been configured yet. So if they have not been configured yet, we need to go back here and mark no. And obviously, this is by the account, so there's no specific location. This is the same across every account. So if this one's no need to write any additional notes. If it is marked yes, you'll see that it has been configured. And obviously, if either one of these, so enhanced conversions for leads or enhanced conversions, if either one of these are not configured yet, it needs to be marked as no. So for businesses not targeting purchases on their website, is every conversion count set to 1 for every conversion? So to check that, we're going to go back into summary. We're going to click on a conversion. And we're going to check the count. So as you can see here, it's marked as every conversion, but this account should only be marked for 1 because they are not tracking purchases. They're tracking leads or signups. So only 1 conversion is valuable. If we were tracking every single one, that means one person could call into the same business 5 different times and it would be marked as 5 conversions, whereas we would only want that to be marked in as 1. If you're an e-commerce business and every purchase is valuable to you, as you can see here, you'd obviously want that to be marked as every. But we're going to leave that the same, the way it was. And we're going to go back here and we are going to mark no. And this just means, and we need to check this for every single conversion. So back into conversion goals. So submit lead form had a problem. So we need to write down submit lead form. And you need to check this for every single conversion you have that's marked as primary. So we'll go in, we'll check this one. As you can see, it's marked as 1 conversion. So that one's good. And we need to check this because we need to write down all of the details because we want to mark as many, we want to check as many conversions as possible so we know which ones are causing problems. But once we've gone through and found all the issues, we'll move on to the next one. I won't spend my time going through every single one because it's the exact same process for every conversion. So for businesses targeting purchases on their website, as we just reviewed, you want those to be marked as every, not as 1, but you should only be completing one of these sections. So if you're targeting purchases, obviously you want to complete this this row. If you're not targeting purchases, complete this row. So in this case, we're going to leave this one blank. But if you are targeting purchases, you look through every one of those conversions and check them to make sure they all say every. So we're done with the conversion section, and we're going to move on to assets. In order to do that, we'll go to campaigns, click this drop-down menu, and click on assets. First one we're going to review, we're going to make sure that the phone number asset has a schedule to only show during business hours, because obviously you can only pick up the phone when you actually have someone on call to pick up the phone. So if somebody's calling at, say, 12 a.m., obviously no one's on the phones accepting that. Unless you're a 24/7 business, then in that case you don't need an ad schedule. But for the most part, most businesses have business hours, and you should make sure that your call asset is only showing to people during your business hours when you can actually pick up the phone. So in order to check that, we're going to go click on call, go here, click edit, and we can see that we do have it during business hours. So we're going to go back here and mark this as yes. If the business has pictures of the service they provide, we want to make sure that there's image assets to show off the results of their service. So we're going to click on images. And as you can see here, we do have images for all of the services that they provide. However, the issue here is that all of the assets are set up by campaign, whereas we would actually want them to be set up by ad group, because we have different ad groups that are promoting different services. So in this case, all dentistry, it's obviously revolving around teeth and the mouth. So a lot of the images are really going to be the same and overlap between ad groups. But if you provide multiple different services, so let's say for a lawn care business, you provide mowing, but you also provide mulching. You don't want a picture of mulching to show up for an ad that is promoting mowing. And so that's why we want to make sure images are split up by ad group, because it helps us optimize it and show the best possible ad to somebody who's searching up our services. So since this is marked out by campaign and not marked out by ad group, we're actually going to mark this as X, and we're going to say that since we only have one campaign, the problem is across all ad groups. And obviously, if you have multiple campaigns or with multiple ad groups inside each one of them, you need to check it by every single ad group to make sure each ad group has pictures specifically for it. If any one ad group doesn't have pictures for it that should, you need to mark this as no, and you need to mark down the ad group that had the problem. Next up, we're going to go to business name and business logo. We need to make sure that we have these, or at least working on them, because it does take some time to get verified for the business. In this case, we can see that we do have a logo and we do have a name, so we can mark those as good. Next up, we want to make sure that there's a business profile location asset. No matter if you have a storefront or not, you still want your Google My Business page connected to your Google Ads account, because it allows for more optimization and more variations of ads that we can create. So we're going to check on locations, and we can see here that we have a business profile selected and that we have a current asset for their storefront. If you do not have a storefront, you do not want to see a location right here. If you see a location here, this is a problem that we will address later on. But we can see we have a location asset, so we'll mark that as good. Yeah, and then here's the next one that we were just talking about. If you are, say, a service area business, so let's say lawn care and landscaping, again, as our example, and you don't have people come to you, you go to people, and you don't want people coming to you, you shouldn't have an address here. It should just show your business name. So if you do see an address there where people can't actually visit, this is a problem, and this will need to be marked as no. But in this case, we do have a storefront, so we're going to skip this section. Next up, we're going to check all the site links, and we're going to make sure that the site links are broken up by ad group. And as you can see here, there are site links specifically by campaign. There are also some by ad group as well, but those were automatically created. As you can see here, these ones that were created by campaign when they should be created by ad group, because you want to only promote the services that are related to the ads that you were showing and the keywords that are in those ad groups. So if you have site link assets that are showing by campaign, you need to mark this as no. And this is a problem across all of our ad groups because we only have one campaign. So we're going to mark this as we can also put in the campaign that we're seeing the problem in. So the name of the campaign is local search. So if you have multiple campaigns and only one of the campaigns has a problem, or only one of the campaigns has assets associated with it, you can just put in the name of the campaign. Next up, we're going to check for promotional offers. So if you do have promotions for your business, we obviously need to see these promotions. It can be by campaign. It doesn't necessarily have to be by ad group as it shows here, but you do want to check by ad group, because if you have specific ads relating to different services, you want to show promotions for each of those ad groups. But in this case, it's not necessarily a problem if the campaign has the promotion. So as we can see here, we're good on this end. Mark that as yes, they do have promotions. And if they have pricing on their website, typically this is just for like e-commerce businesses or people who can sell their services directly on their site. You need to check to make sure that there are price assets. In this case, the Polaris Industry doesn't sell things on their website, so there won't be any price assets. Final two things we are going to check are callouts and structured snippets. We need to make sure that there are callouts broken out by ad group. We do not want them broken out by campaign, because obviously each ad group is promoting different services. So we want callouts specifically for each ad group. So as you can see here, there are no callouts by ad group. So we're actually going to go back here and we're going to mark this as no. And the problems across all ad groups inside local search. So lastly, we're going to check structured snippets in the exact same way. And you can see here that at the campaign level, there's a structured snippet, but obviously we just want to be promoting services, or we want to have structured snippets by ad group. So if it's showing by campaign, this is also a problem. So we'll go back in and put in the exact same issue that we had with callouts. And we're done with the asset section. Next up, we're going to check account settings. In order to do that, we're going to go to Admin, Account Settings, and then we're going to go to Access and Security. And for the first one, we're going to check, are all the people and managers with access to your account inside your organization, or still need access to your confidential data? So if you've ever outsourced any of your Google Ads to any other organization, a lot of the times people forget to remove them from your ads, and they are able to use all of the data that's in your Google Ads account to possibly help out your competitors. And so we don't want them to have access to data that's yours, and they don't need access to it anymore. It's also possible that you had people on your team that are no longer working with you, and you just don't want any security breaches when it comes to your Google Ads account. So we're going to check through here. We're both going to check in users to make sure all the users line up with the people that should have access, and you also want to check managers. This is something that is commonly overlooked. Is ad agencies have manager accounts that you don't typically see unless you go to the managers tab. And so you just want to remove access from any ad manager that doesn't need access anymore. But in this case, everyone who needs access has access. Next up, we're going to go to account settings. We want to make sure that there's a data protection contact. This allows you to track calls and such. If you don't have a data protection contact, it will sometimes not allow you to track calls, which can interfere with your optimization. But in this case, we have a data protection contact, so we'll mark that as good. Is customer match turned on? So what we want to do there is check down here, making sure that customer match is turned on. It is, so we're good to go. I want to make sure call reporting is turned on as well. As you can see here, it is turned on. And finally, we want to check to make sure the call and messaging ad terms are accepted. And as you can see here, they have been accepted. So we're good on all counts on this section. Moving on, we're going to go check out our ads. Go back out to campaigns, drop down menu, click ads. And from here, you can see that we just currently have one ad enabled. So this is the only one we need to review. There's no reason to check out ads that aren't currently running. You also want to make sure that the ad group status and ad campaign status are set to enabled. No reason to check out ads that just aren't running at the moment. So we're going to go in, I'm going to click edit. And while that's loading, we're going to check, does each ad have a highly specific landing page relevant to the exact services and keywords? So in order to check that, we're going to copy and paste this URL. And from here, you can see that we go straight to the home page. So this is not necessarily specific to the ads that we are running. Typically, you want to have a specific landing page that is dedicated to the ads that you are running. So if we go back here, we can see some of the keywords that we're talking about. A lot of the keywords are really broad, but when we go down to the headlines, you can see that we're talking about pediatric dental care, family dentistry. We really want our landing page to talk about some of these headlines that are more relevant than just the straight homepage. So if your ads are being directed straight to your homepage, you need to mark this as no, because this is not, your homepage is not a highly specific landing page. You should have additional landing pages specifically dedicated to each ad. And you'll need to check every single ad for this. If any one of them doesn't have a specific landing page, you'll need to mark this as no and report which ad has that problem. So in this case, the ad group that has the problem is local search. So that's as specific as we can get, is the local search ad group. So we'll just mention that we found the problem in the local search ad group. Moving on, you'll need to do this check on every single ad as well. You need to check to make sure that there's at least 10 headlines filled out. Typically, you should have all of them filled out, but in this case, we do have all of them filled out. But sometimes it's hard to come up with a bunch of different phrases to promote your business, and so at the minimum, we'd like to have 10. So in this case, we're good. And obviously, for all of these, you're going to have to go into every single ad and check every single ad to make sure they all line up with these specifications. We're next going to check, does each ad have ad strength of good or excellent? We'll see it up here. So we can see our ad strength is excellent. So we're good on that end. Moving on, are the assets relevant to the services being offered? So this is something that the assets are considered the headlines, and you also have the assets down here, specifically by ad group. And that's where we were talking about earlier, all of these assets, making sure that the assets are by ad group. Now we're getting more specific and making sure that not only do each of the ad groups have assets, but we're making sure that the assets are actually specific to what we're promoting in our ad. So we'll check the site links, and we can see down here, cosmetic dentistry, not as applicable because we did previously have an ad group specifically talking about cosmetic dentistry, but this does overlap with some of the keywords. So you want to make sure that the assets overlap not only with the headlines right here, but they overlap with what your keywords are talking about. And so since dentist is pretty broad, as long as the headlines and the assets apply, relatively speaking, to those keywords, we should be good. So as we can see there, the site link lines up. We can check these promotions. 50% off whitening, that does line up. That makes sense with what we're promoting. Phone call, obviously that's going to line up. Call outs, we can see that these are going to line up, but we can have more specific call outs to pediatric and family dentistry. So this is something we would want to go in and say, hey, it applies, but it's not super specific. So this is something that we would mark as no, our assets are actually not relevant to the services being offered, because while they are technically relevant, they're not as beneficial as they could be. So we're just going to mark that we found this problem in local search. Obviously, this is relatively objective. There's no specific metric when it comes to this, but if it seems like you could have more specific callouts or assets, or your assets could be better, they probably could be. So we're just going to mark that as no, because it's something we want to review. Does the ad copy stack up well against competitors' ads for the same keywords? So this is something that we'll do by copying one of our keywords up here. We'll actually copy a couple of them. So in this case, we're going to copy dentist, and then we need to make sure that we do it by the specific location. So in this case, Polaris Dentistry, we need to do it in Sachse, Texas, because that's where they're located. So we're going to go up here. And check out the ads that show up. And what we can do is not only look at the ads, we can also look at some of the websites that just pop up that aren't necessarily sponsored, because these headlines are also performing well because their websites are showing up so high. So we can see that a lot of these, when we search up by Sachse, Texas, obviously that's not going to line up perfectly with our exact keywords, because we're not actually in this location. So obviously, if you're doing this audit for another business, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to line up your keywords with your competitors. But if you're performing this in the same location as the business, so if you're the business owner or anybody that's working on the Google Ads campaign that lives in the general vicinity of wherever this campaign is, you don't need to type in the specific location, because Google will know your location and basically be able to use that keyword and show you ads relevant to your surrounding location. So in this case, we just want to compare it to other players in our industry. It doesn't necessarily need to be competitors in the exact same location. So we can just look up their exact keyword that they've been using, dentist near me, and we just want to see what other people are putting in their headlines in order to get clicks on their ads. And typically, the people that are showing up first have the better ads, obviously. So as you can see, these people are using the exact keyword: best local dentist near you, dental care in Franklin, dentist near me. They're using a lot of the keywords like Google recommends in their headlines. So we're going to go down here and make sure that a lot of the headlines line up with the search terms that we're actually showing. So we can see we have dental care, we have dentist, we have dental. So we should see a lot of those headlines. A lot of our headlines should have those keywords that we are trying to show for. And as you can see, we're showing up. All the headlines are showing the keywords that we're trying to show for. So our headlines do match up to our competitors decently. Obviously, you can go in a lot more depth, but I'm not going to spend 15 minutes on this video showing you how to search up every single one of these keywords and compare your headlines to theirs. But it is helpful if you go through, say, your top 5 performing keywords and look at what other competitors in your industry who are bidding on those keywords are putting in their headlines. But in this case, we'll put that our ad copy does stack up well. If you have any hesitation about your ad copy compared to your competitors, put no. It's definitely something worth reviewing. In this case, we know our ads work. We know that we've been showing up really high. But if it's something that you're like, you see your competitors' headlines and then you see yours and you feel kind of iffy, that's definitely something you should put no for, because it's something we want to review and make sure that we feel very strongly about our headlines and how they'll perform. Additionally, you can check your ad copy against competitors in the Google Ads Transparency Center. So if you are looking to compare your ads to specific competitors in your area, you'll want to go to the Google Ads Transparency Center. And this is specifically helpful for looking up specific businesses. This is not helpful for looking up keywords. This is just helpful for looking up somebody that's in your area that you know is also advertising and you'd like to see what they're doing so you can try to maybe mimic them or create headlines that are better. So in this case, we're going to look up dentist in Sachse, Texas. So we can see that Snodgrass King. This is the Transparency Center is especially helpful for looking up what larger companies are doing. So we can now see all of the ads that they've been trying to run. This obviously doesn't show every possible one that they've run, but this shows some of their top performing ones. And you can see what kind of headlines they use in order to get clicks on their ads. And so as we can see here, there's not a ton of examples. Obviously, you want to look for as many competitors as possible. I recommend looking up at least 5 of the competitors in your area to kind of compare what ads they are showing compared to your ads that you're showing. So as we can see here, a lot of what they do has to do with their actual name. You can see Snodgrass King showing up a lot. One thing that we don't show on our headlines is now accepting new patients. So that actually might be something where you see, oh, actually, that is a good idea for a headline. And so if you see anything where you think, oh, that would be a good idea for a headline, I would recommend marking this as the ad copy not stacking up well, because you want your headlines to be perfect. You want all 15 of your headlines to be the best possible. You don't want to be like, oh, I would rather replace one of the headlines with something that a competitor is using. So we're actually going to mark that as no, and that's something that you can do here when you're looking up competitors' ads under the keyword. If you feel that you could use any of their headlines, I could see you also marking no here, just so that way you go back in and know, all right, this is something that needs to be reviewed. It's something that can be improved upon. So we definitely want to go back and make sure that we review that. And so in that case, we're actually going to leave this one where it was, but we'll mark this one as no for example's sake. But just be aware that anything you mark as no is something that will get reviewed and make sure that everything stacks up as best as possible. So if you do have any hesitation on any of these sections, we do recommend marking no, because it does allow us to go through and actually look over it more in depth. So as we know, we only have one ad group, so we're actually just going to put local search. Oh, this one actually doesn't need it. And we are good on the ad section. To review the keyword section, we're going to need to go in to our Google Ads account and go into the ad group setting, because we're going to be reviewing our keywords ad group by ad group. So once we select the ad group, now that we're in search keywords, we can now review the search keywords that our ad group contains. So as you can see here, this ad group has a ton of keywords, 79. Our recommended limit is 20. So as you can tell, this is definitely not less than 20 keywords per ad group. So we're going to mark this as no. And obviously this is in the local search ad group. We don't need the ad group section because we know this is by ad group. Do they have more than 10 negative keywords per campaign? This is actually should be 10 negative keywords per ad group. So we're going to go in, and now that we're in the search keywords, we're going to click on negative search keywords. And as you can see here, we only have 7 negative keywords. This typically means that your ads can be showing to the wrong audience. You want to get very in-depth when it comes to the negative search terms. You want to have a lot of exact match negative keywords most of the time. If you're especially if you're running broad match keywords, you're going to run into searches that don't line up with the service offering that you have. So as you can see here, we actually only have 2 in our ad group and then 5 in our campaign. So we obviously need to put some work into the amount of negative keywords in this campaign or in this ad group, I might say. So obviously this is marked as no, and this is going to go in local search. So if the campaign has been running for over a month, have they paused all keywords that have 0 clicks? So as you can see, as we could see beforehand, when we were looking at 79 different keywords, we can see that it's been running for over a month. We're looking at it for a month. We're going to go back a little over a month. That way we just have all the data. And as you can see, we have not paused all the keywords. So going in here, mark that as no, still in local search. Do they have close competitors as their keywords? So what we're going to do is in this specific ad group, typically when you are creating different ad groups, you want to have a specific ad group dedicated specifically to showing ads underneath your competitor search terms. So if you have specific competitors in your area that you want to try to take clients away from or business away from, you need to have an ad group specifically for those keywords, so that way you can show ads specifically to people who are looking up your competitors. So we will quickly run through the search terms that are currently being shown. I'm going to pause the video real quick while I go through it and check for any possible competitors in our keywords. So after going through it, we have 2 possible keywords that haven't shown up at all, but the 2 possible keywords that are competitors, but this is not an exhaustive list. There should be more competitors marked as keywords, so we're actually going to put this as no. Obviously, if you really only have 2 competitors in your target market, then you can mark this as yes, because you have done a pretty exhaustive list of the competitors. But for the area that we're talking about, there are going to be more than 2 dentists competing with them for business, so we're going to mark this as no, but this is local search. And the other 2 questions after this also have to do with the competitor keywords. So obviously we only have 1 ad group, and so that means that there's no ad group specifically for competitor keywords, so we'll mark that as no. Nothing necessarily to put here because there is no ad group. Additionally, if they have competitor keywords, so they do have competitor keywords technically, but they haven't done anything in terms of performance, so we're going to mark that as no, and we'll mark that we're using the data from the local search ad group because that's where we find that competitor keywords. Obviously, if you have multiple ad groups, you may have competitor keywords spread out. So if they are performing well, but they're not in their own ad group, you can mark this as yes, and you can mark this as yes, but this would be marked as no if you don't have them specifically in their own ad group. Next up, we're going to check to see that they have their company name as one of their keywords. So a quick way we can do that is we can add a filter, come down here, click on attributes, scroll down, click keyword text, and we're going to put the name of the company. Click apply. So as you can see, no keywords match our filters. So when we come in here, we know that they do not have their company name as one of their keywords. And you need to check this through every single ad group to make sure it's not showing up in any of them, because obviously if it's showing up in one of them, we can mark this as yes. And so since they don't have their company name in their keywords, their company name doesn't actually have its own ad group. So we're going to mark this as no. And since they don't have their company name, it doesn't have any performance, so we'll mark that no as well. And not necessarily any details to put here because since it doesn't show up, there's no ad group for us to mention because it doesn't show up in any of them. So we're going to keep moving on. Are there broad match keywords in every ad group? So obviously we only have one ad group to check. But as you can see here, we have broad match keywords, so we can mark this as yes. And then we need to check for phrase match keywords. You can see it does have phrase match keywords, so we can mark that as yes. Is the quality score of any keyword less than 4? So the way we can check this is we're going to clear the filters, click on columns, click edit. From here, we're going to look at all the columns, look at the quality score, click quality score, click apply. And from here, you can see that most of these keywords don't have a quality score, but the ones that do have a 3 out of 10. We're going to actually go back and get a little bit more data to see if it shows more quality scores. And you can see it does not change. So the highest quality scores that we have are 3. And that means that obviously we do had to quickly rephrase that question. So we wanted to check to make sure that either the quality score of every keyword is either blank or it's greater than 4. And so as we can see here, we do have quality scores that are less than 4. So we're going to mark this as no, and we're going to mark that we found it in the local search ad group. Once again, mentioning that you need to check every single ad group. And if you find that only specific ad groups have no for this question, you obviously need to mention which ad groups those are. Have you looked for new keywords with the keyword planner? This one doesn't necessarily have any objective metrics. I'm just going to show you where the keyword planner is, so that way you know if you've used it before. So the keyword planner here allows us to go in and find new keywords that we might not possibly have thought of. And if you've used this before, obviously, and you've used this and you've implemented keywords from the keyword planner, you can mark this as yes. But if you haven't used a keyword planner before or you haven't implemented keywords on the keyword planner, we're going to mark this as no. In this case, we have used the keyword planner, so we're going to mark it as yes. And obviously, you're going to want to check this by ad group. So if you've used the keyword planner for one ad group but not another, mark it as no and mention the ad group that you didn't use the keyword planner for. Does the company have an ad group with the location specific keywords for each location they're targeting? So in this case, we only have one ad group, and so that means we don't have a specific ad group for the locations that they're targeting. So we're going to mark this as no. Going back to our ad groups that we were checking. So as you can see, we only have that one ad group. Most of the time you want to try to have a specific ad group for every location that you are targeting with your ads. So if you don't have an ad group for each location that you target, you're going to mark this as no. And obviously if you don't have those ad groups, there's nothing to write down here. But if, say, you do have a couple locations with ad groups, or a couple ad groups for a couple locations, but there are some locations that you haven't made an ad group for, you need to mention what locations those are that you haven't made ad groups for. And finally, we're checking to see if there are any location-specific keywords across any of the campaigns. So if you don't have one of these ad groups with location-specific keywords, we want to check in the campaign section. We're going to go out here and then click search keywords. And we want to see if we actually have any keywords that are enabled. So we're going to put the filter to keywords that are enabled. We want to check to see if there's any actual keywords that have a city name or a state name in them, because those can be very beneficial keywords to test out. So as you can see down here, we do have a couple keywords with locations in them, but as we saw before when we were reviewing locations, there are 4 locations that we are targeting, so we would expect at least 4 search keywords for locations. So if you're missing any location that doesn't have its own keyword, we're going to mark this as no, and the campaign that we didn't find it in was local search. And you want to do this by each campaign. So if one campaign does have keywords in it, but another campaign doesn't, you want to put no and mention what campaign wasn't showing it. What campaign didn't have those local keywords in it. Going off of our theme of keywords, we're going to go into search terms. And for these search terms, this is basically what customers are searching up when looking for services that the business is promoting. So we want to do this by ad group because obviously each ad group is going to be promoting different services. In this case, we only have one ad group, so it doesn't really make a difference. But if you have multiple ad groups, you want to check your search terms for each ad group by ad group in order to exclude certain keywords from each ad group so it doesn't overlap with the other ad groups that you have going on. So now that we've got it filtered down, we're going to filter by impressions, and we want to look at all of the search terms that have 2+ impressions. And we want to look through all of these to see if any of them do not apply to the services that we are trying to promote. Additionally, you want to filter by the past 2 to 3 months because those are the most recent search terms that apply. If you go for over a year, you're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of keywords with those 2+ impressions. So we're only worried about the keywords that are getting clicked on in the recent present. So once we've got this filtered down, we want to do it by about the top 100. If you start getting more than 150, 200 keywords with more than 2+ impressions, I would just stop there. That means you have a big enough budget where search terms with impressions aren't going with search terms with impressions that have less than X number of impressions aren't going to affect your campaign performance too much. So typically we want to stop after about 200 keywords or 200 search terms that we've reviewed. This is a very labor-intensive process and can take a while, so it's very helpful to just briefly look over them to try to find any possible search keywords or search terms that don't apply to your business, and then allow yourself to outsource actually filtering down and creating negative keywords to more precisely focus your ads and your ad groups. So an example of a search term that doesn't apply to the business is dental implant schools near me. So we're a dentist. We're doing this for a dentist. They obviously are not a school, so we don't want to be showing up for this keyword. So if we go back here, we're going to mark this as no. As soon as you find at least one search term that doesn't make sense, you're going to mark this immediately as no, because that means your negative keywords are not filtered enough, which means there is a problem in that ad group, and you can stop your search right there. You can move on to the next ad group. That way you don't spend a ton of time finding dozens of possible bad keywords. This is a very important one. If you mark this as no, you have a serious need of some help filtering down your search terms in order to stop you from spending on wasteful clicks. So we're going to mark that we found bad search terms in the local search ad group, and you'll want to mark this for every single ad group that you find bad search terms in. Is every search term average cost per click less than 3 times the average cost per click for the ad group it shows in? So this is just checking to make sure that we're not spending a ton of money on super high cost keyword or super high cost per clicks. So as you can see here, we have our cost per click right here is $2 and approximately 50 cents. So 3 times that would be $7.50. So this is the only keyword that actually is 3 times higher. Right now, it only got 1 click on it, so that's not a huge deal to us right now. And it also directly applies to the services that we are promoting. So this isn't something that we would want to mark as an exact or mark as a negative keyword, but it is concerning that we're spending 3 times the average cost per click on any given keyword. So we're going to mark this as no, because we do have a keyword that is above that average, or above 3 times that average. And we want to check this by each ad group because the average cost per click for each ad group can vary. Now we're going to go back out to the entire account view to check for more basic problems. And we're going to filter by the conversion rate. So as you can see here, we have conversion rates over 100%. So this is not a positive sign. So we want to mark this. We're actually right here. So every search term conversion rate below 100%, that is not true. So we're going to mark that as no. And this is by the account settings. So there's nothing you can mark. It's helpful if you write down maybe the search terms that you found that had an issue, but if there's a ton of them, you can just mark, we can just write, several different keywords. But if there's just a couple, you can write them down. That way it's easier to find and fix. Going back, does every search term have a click-through rate of less than 100%? Going to filter by the click-through rate. And as we can see here, the highest one is 100%, so we are safe on that end. So we can mark that as yes. Now that we are done with the search term section, we're on to the miscellaneous section. So the first thing we're going to check is the auto-apply recommendations. We're going to make sure that we have the correct recommendations turned on that are auto-applying. So we're going to do this auto-apply section, and we're going to make sure that all of these are turned on. If they're not turned on, we're going to mark it as no, but since they're all turned on, we're good to move to the next one. Are you tracking the relevant audience segments, including website visitors via Google Analytics? So in order to view that, we're going to come down here to the audiences section. Once this loads in, we're going to check to see if we have audience segments. As you can see, it says add, and there's no drop-down menu for us to view audience segments, so this means we are not currently tracking them. In some cases, Google will not allow you to track audience segments, especially for the medical field. So as you can see here, everything is unknown for the most part. So that can be one of the reasons you don't have audience segments, but for the most part, you should be tracking audience segments. So we are going to click Add Audience Segments, and we are going to do this by campaign. Click on a campaign. And once we're in here, we'll be able to see if all of the correct audience segments are selected. So as we saw before, we actually had none selected, but if you do have a few selected, you'll be able to come in here and browse the audience segments that you do have selected. So you'll want to go to this, how they've interacted with your business, and go to the website visitors. And so unfortunately, we're not eligible because this is a healthcare industry, but for the most part, most businesses are eligible. And so if you don't have this selected, you need to mark that you have not selected the relevant audience tracking segments. So if you don't have any audiences, or you don't even have the website visitors, we're just going to mark that as no. So obviously in this case, it's just something for us to review. In the case of this business, that's not a problem because they're not allowed to, but for most businesses, that is a problem if you're not tracking that. So moving on, if they have really poor performing days or hours, do you have an ad schedule? So in order to check that, we're going to go back to Google Ads, go to when and where ads showed. Then we are going to filter by day to get started. And we're going to want to do this by campaign Typically, we want to start with a campaign with the most amount of clicks, just so it's easy to see if we have this problem right off the bat. So as we can see here, we do have a relatively wide range in terms of performance. We have really low performance down here with Tuesday, and then almost half the cost per conversion on Monday. So when you have a wide range like this, this is definitely something to take note of. And so if you're not filtering by day, like in terms of you don't have an ad schedule that filters by day, we're just going to want to go ahead and mention this. It may not be something that needs to be fixed, but it's definitely something worth looking into. So if you have a wide cost per conversion like this by day, we're definitely going to mark this as no, especially if you don't have an ad schedule. In this case, we do have an ad schedule. And we do have an ad schedule by day. So the way we can tell we have it by day is that we aren't showing for Tuesday, which you can see up here. We don't show for Tuesday. And you can see that we'd have it by hour as well, because we're not showing for every hour of the day. So we do have an ad schedule. So we can actually mark this as yes. But when we actually go back here and we check, now we're going to check by hour. So if your days all have relatively equal cost per conversions, there's no issue there. So we move on and check by hour. Now we're going to filter by cost per conversion. And as you can see here, there's a wide range. We have all the way from $5 all the way up to $40. So if there is no ad schedule in this case, you would definitely need to mark it as no. But we do have an ad schedule, so we are marking it as yes. Next is the account cost per conversion below the industry average according to the Google Ads cost per conversion PDF. So we're going to go ahead and open up this PDF. And we're going to look for the industry that best represents the business that we are currently working with. So right now we're working with health. So as you can see here, the health one is around $69. So we are going to go over and go to the account overview, all campaigns, and we can see that we are well below that average cost per conversion. Obviously, this is no catch-all because the industries are quite broad, but it is something to take into consideration if you are not currently under it, because most of the times a Google Ads manager can help you beat the industry average on most occasions. So as we can see here, cost per conversion way below industry average. So we are going to go back and mark this as good. Look at the past year of data or lifetime account if the account has been only open for less than a year. Is the performance consistent with no lasting decrease or increase in performance? So go back here. We're going to select 365 days up to yesterday. Click apply. And while that loads in, we want to look at a few key metrics. Cost per click is not something we really want to worry about, so we'll uncheck that. We're actually going to go back. Let's see. We're going to go back about a week because you can see how there's that drop off with the clicks, but that's just because this week is only halfway through. So we're actually going to go back to the first. But as you can see here, it's a relatively consistent line in terms of clicks. So we're going to check off clicks. We don't really have any problems there. In terms of conversions, really bouncing a lot, like back up and down. But if you can see the consistent trend line, we have a pretty consistent trend line sitting right around here. We did have a significant drop, and then you can kind of see it tailing off over the past several weeks. So this is something where we would mention that there has been a sustained increase and then a sustained decrease, because we want to go in and look, okay, what were we doing well up here? And then why did it tail off? And so we're definitely going to mark this as something that's important to look at. So we're going to mark this as no. The data has not been consistent. And we can mark what hasn't been consistent, and we can mark conversions. And you can typically look at that. You can also look at the cost per conversion as well. You can see that there are a bunch of spikes here. So if your conversion data stays consistent, but the cost per conversion kind of follows a weird trend line, that's also something that's concerning that we also want to mark and look at. But in this case, there's just a couple of little spikes, but they're not sustained. For the most part, it's been pretty consistent down here. It was kind of increased around this range, and then it decreased and stayed this way for a while. So that would also be something to mention, the cost per conversion. Also add sustained increases and sustained decreases. So moving on to the next thing is the Google Analytics connected to Google Ads. To check that, we're actually going to have to go outside of Google Ads and open up Google Analytics and go to the Google Analytics page, in this case for Polaris Dentistry. From here, we're going to go to Product Links, Google Ads, and once we click on Google Ads, we can see that the Google Ads link is active and the account is Polaris Dentistry, so we are good on that end. If you don't have a Google Analytics account, obviously it can't be connected to Google Ads. You don't need to mark it as no. Is there a budget in each campaign to get at least 1 click per day to each ad group? So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Google Ads, go back to campaigns, go down to the campaign section, and we are going to check out the budget for that campaign. Look at the average cost per click, and the average cost per click is around $250. Divide 12 by 250, we're looking at approximately 5. We're getting approximately 5 clicks per day. We only have 1 ad group, so that means we are getting more clicks than ad groups, so we are good on that end. If we had 6 ad groups, that would mean we have a problem because we're getting less clicks per day than we do have ad groups, so we would need that would be marked as no over here. Additionally, we have this Smart campaign, which operates as just a singular ad group as well. As you can see, the cost per click is below the average daily budget, so we are good on that end. As long as, for Smart campaigns, as long as the daily budget is above the average cost per click, you're good to go. So in this case, we are safe. Are the landing pages mobile, tablet, and computer friendly? This is something that you'll need to have access to Google Search Console in order to check. So if you don't know what Google Search Console is or you don't have it set up yet, we're going to mark this as no. So currently we do not have it set up. So we're checking that as no. And if, quite frankly, if you're unsure, you might as well check this as no. But if you think you may have it set up and you think that your landing pages are good, I would just mark it as unsure because it's worth checking over to make sure there is no issue on that end. Finally, for the last thing we're going to do, we're going to check Auction Insights to see if we are getting a solid enough impression share. And we want to check this over the past 6 to 10 weeks just to make sure that our performance is doing well in the recent time period. So if you don't have any Auction Insights, it's because you have less than 10% of the impression share. This isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it means that you just simply don't have the budget to appear that often. But it could be a sign that you need to filter down your keywords a lot more. As we saw with the budget, we've got a relatively low budget for this campaign, so it's not unexpected that the Auction Insights aren't showing up for us and that we have a relatively low impression share, but it's still something worth checking over just in case it's something that it should be a goal that you should be striving to hit. So if you haven't hit it yet, it's definitely something worth reviewing. So we're going to mark that as X. And from here, that just about covers a full Google Ads audit. It is definitely a lot, and quite frankly, it can be a lot more in depth if you have a larger campaign. So, if it's something you're looking to outsource, please reach out to Creekside Marketing. We can handle all of this for you, speed up the process, and make sure everything is handled correctly, and make sure your Google Ads accounts aren't wasting money and are as optimized as they possibly can be. Hopefully, this gives you a better understanding of your overall Google Ads account health.